What's the first image that comes to your mind when you think of an angel? If you're like most people, it's probably a person with wings, wearing robes and carrying a harp, or maybe a sword. The Bible does describe some angels appearing as men, but I think most of us know that's more a concession to the human imagination, not a literal description of what they really look like. At least as early as the Second Temple era, Jews were already thinking of angels as pure intellect, without physical form. Which creates an obvious problem for anyone who wants to depict them. What should an immaterial spirit look like? The answer most artists landed on was pretty simple. Whatever your audience already thinks divinity looks like. By late antiquity, early Christian artists were using symbols their Greek and Roman audiences could recognize. The halos were borrowed from Greek and Persian art, where they marked someone as favored by the gods. The robes are basically just togas, the symbol of civic authority in the Roman Empire. And wings suggested a being that moves between our world and a higher one. The Church Fathers went out of their way to remind their readers that none of this was meant literally, that it's a visual shorthand pointing at something the human eye can never actually see. As St. John Chrysostom puts it, angels are represented with wings that you may know they leave the heights to approach human nature. The wings have no other meaning than to indicate the sublimity of their nature. Then we get to the Renaissance and start seeing them with these idealized classical bodies. Sometimes it's a serene, androgynous youth, or else these chubby little naked toddlers, which are either charming or slightly unnerving depending on who you ask. And these depictions are basically a Neoplatonic thing, this idea that beauty is a reflection of a divine order, that the nicer something looks, the closer it is to God, and vice versa. But beauty is a slippery concept, and over time it starts to mean something very different. It stops being just about symmetry and proportion and starts being more about emotion. Now the most beautiful images aren't just the most physically perfect, they're the ones that hit you right in the feels. And so, by around the 19th century, angels start to become these gentle female companions, figures of tenderness and consolation rather than divine authority. And that pretty much completes the image of angels that we've inherited. The angels of Hallmark cards and gift shop figurines, sentimental to the point of being tacky. But if you've been online a lot in the last decade or so, you might have a very different image in mind. The so-called biblically accurate angel. Isaiah describes seraphim with 6 wings, 2 of which are specifically for covering their own faces, which could mean their face is just that scary they have to hide it from you, or there's something out there that even they can't bear to look at. Then you've got Ezekiel's visions of these terrifying composite creatures, and giant spinning wheels nested inside each other, and the rims are covered in eyes all the way around. I get why this version of angels is having a moment right now. They definitely feel like a recovery of something genuinely strange lurking just under the surface of the Bible. Like for centuries we've been so busy making angels approachable and decorative, and we got so comfortable with the Hallmark card version that we forgot these things are often portrayed as weird and scary. And the people who encountered them responded by basically just collapsing on the ground thinking they were going to die. I think these angels are pretty cool. And yeah, they are right there in the text, at least as plainly as anything else. But I also don't think the biblically accurate angel is giving us the whole picture either. Because if the Christmas tree decorations reduce angels to something that feels too familiar, too human, then these depictions might be going too far in the opposite direction. They can make angels feel arbitrary, just other. Higher and stranger than us, sure, but also totally incomprehensible. Like something out of H.P. Lovecraft. These utterly alien intelligences operating according to no logic a human mind could ever access. But the Bible is pretty clearly not a Lovecraft story. The God these beings are supposed to serve is meant to be the literal logos, the rational principle underlying everything. Which means the beings that are closest to him shouldn't be totally incomprehensible or irrational. They should be, if anything, super-rational, like reason operating on a level our little brains can't follow, but still kind of recognize as rational. It's like how sheet music will be incomprehensible to someone who hasn't learned music theory. You can't tell what it means exactly, but you can see it means something. There's a pattern there, a structure. It's not just random nonsense. If you really study it, you might even be able to match parts of the pattern to the crescendos and quiet parts of the music you're hearing. You just don't have the knowledge to understand what it's actually doing. I think the strangeness of angels should feel kind of like that. Not the strangeness of incomprehensible aliens. More like the strangeness of picking up on a pattern that the world seems to answer to. The word angel is from the Greek angelos. Its Hebrew equivalent is malach, and both of these words mean the same thing: messenger. Typically, we interpret this as a reference to what angels do. Whether it looks like a pretty Victorian woman or a wheel of eyes, the assumption is that an angel is fundamentally a creature like us, with a specific job title. A divine courier passing along a message from God to humanity. But a message isn't just a piece of information that moves between 2 points. A message is also a meaning that must take a particular form in order to travel. And the form it takes is not incidental to the meaning. The form is how the meaning becomes real, how it actually exists in our world. You can't separate them. Think about a king who sends a herald to a rival court. The herald is carrying a scroll with words from the king, but that's not the king's message. The herald is the king's message. How he speaks, the way he's dressed. Does he arrive with pomp and circumstance, attended by an entourage? Or stumbling in on foot, ragged and out of breath? All of that is part of the message the king is sending. The whole physical reality of his presence is part of what's being communicated. And the same goes for the heralds of God. An angel isn't simply a creature whose purpose is to deliver messages. The angel is the message. And part of its message is demonstrating how the Word of God can be represented in the world. Saint Dionysius says that the names of the angels aren't actually names, not in the way that we think of them. Take the seraphim. The word seraph is Hebrew for burning, but a seraph isn't called burning because it's on fire. Its name is burning because that's what it is, at the highest level of that concept. Think about what fire represents: its continuous rising movement, purifying heat, the way it transforms everything it touches into itself. All of that is the very essence of the seraph. It's not a creature that happens to burn. Burning is the aspect of God's nature it expresses. Which is not to say that God is on fire either, but that fire, as it exists in the world, is also a way that God expresses something about himself. And this kind of meaning is built into everything. The whole world is a vast system of signs descending from and pointing back toward their source. And in that system, angels are the signs closest to the source, the expression before it gets diluted into matter. It doesn't actually matter whether or not you take them literally, whether you think they're real beings that have physically appeared to the prophets, descriptions of abstract visions and hallucinations, or even just literary devices. Either way, the meaning is there. The concept of an angel is already doing the work that angels are supposed to do. If all of this sounds like a stretch, the Bible makes it harder to dismiss than you might think. Its authors seem to depict angels in ways that are hard to separate from the things they're associated with. The angel of the Lord appears everywhere in the Old Testament. He speaks with the voice of God, he receives worship, but the text never draws a clear line between the angel of the Lord and the actual Lord. At the burning bush, Moses sees the angel in the fire, and then one verse later he's talking to God, without any correction or explanation. Jacob wrestles all night with the angel, and walks away saying he's seen God face to face. That's where the name Israel comes from, one who wrestles with God. Nobody really knows what to do with this figure. Early Christians tended to view it as the pre-incarnate Christ, while Rabbinic Judaism condemned a heresy that taught there were two powers in heaven. I think the most honest response is that something about this figure resists a clean boundary between the representation and the thing being represented, between the message and the God who sends it. If God is expressed to Israel through his angel, what about the rest of the world? Deuteronomy 32 seems to have an answer to this question. It says that God divided the nations according to the number of the angels. At first glance, this sounds kind of like a king appointing governors to rule distant provinces. But if the seraph is the highest expression of burning, then these angels are the highest expression of a nation. The invisible pattern that makes a people distinct. A particular mode of being human in history. It's the old Hermetic principle, as above, so below. The nation and the angel aren't really two distinct things. They're expressions of the same meaning, as it exists in the world, in language, custom, and culture, and as it exists in the immaterial. The virtues a people are called to embody, the ideals their myths and stories are reaching towards. The book of Revelation opens with John describing a vision of Christ, dictating letters to 7 churches in Asia Minor. These were actual churches, made up of real people that John and his audience were well aware of in their time. But Christ doesn't address the congregations, or even their leaders. He addresses their angels, and he addresses each angel as if it is the church. The good works of the church are the good works of its angel. The failures of the angel are the failures of the church. The angel of Laodicea is lukewarm. The angel of Sardis has a reputation for being alive, but is dead. And the angel of Ephesus seems to be doing fine. It works hard, it perseveres, it does everything a church is supposed to do. It just no longer remembers that it has fallen. We usually imagine the spiritual world as a binary, with holy angels on one side and demons on the other. But if Christ's message to the angels is anything to go by, it doesn't seem to be that simple. These are clearly angels in good standing. In John's vision, they're stars held in Christ's right hand, and he's speaking to them as things that belong to him. But in the same breath, he's calling them to repent, to remember what they used to be, and return to their first love. Christ seems to be implying that angels can fail to express their intended meaning. This might sound like a strange claim, but Paul himself says it plainly. Christ came to reconcile all things, things on earth and things in heaven. We all know the story of the fall of man, the garden, the serpent, the forbidden fruit, the moment everything falls apart. I think even those of us who don't see it as literal history at least recognize that it's communicating something that feels true. This sense that the world as it is not the world as it should be. But anyone who sits with the story for a minute is going to notice something that the authors and their audience took for granted. The serpent is already there. Something is already corrupt, already working against God's purposes, before any human makes a bad choice. Which means the fall in the garden isn't actually the first fall. It can't be. Something had already gone wrong somewhere else before that story even begins. And most of us already know the vague outline of that story, too. Satan, the war in heaven, the angels who chose the wrong side. We picture something like Milton's version of Satan in Paradise Lost, this proud, defiant being that says better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. But if you go back to the text looking for more details, there's almost nothing there. It's actually kind of surprising how little the Bible actually says about any of this. The word Satan in the Old Testament isn't actually a name, it's a title. It means adversary or accuser. And the figure it describes seems closer to a prosecuting attorney acting at God's command. There's a passage in Isaiah about a figure called the morning star being cast down from heaven. But in context, it's almost certainly just a taunt against the king of Babylon. But the basic idea of fallen angels, of cosmic rebellion, is everywhere in the Second Temple era. The New Testament doesn't argue for it, it just takes it for granted. The oldest, most detailed story we have about fallen angels comes from the book of Enoch. Enoch introduces a group of angels called the Watchers, who were created to look after and guide humanity. The Watchers look down from heaven, and they see that human women are beautiful, and come down to earth to take them as wives. And while they live among us, the world starts to change. We learn things from them. How to read the stars and make potions from the roots of the earth. How to dig metals out of the ground and smelt it into tools and weapons. Even how to make jewelry and cosmetics. And if we look around, this is literally just describing our world. Not even in a sinister way. These aren't forbidden arts. It's not some dark magic mankind was never meant to possess. It's just civilization. The stuff humans do. The stuff we're proud of. None of it is inherently wrong. Astrology and potions, that's just how ancient people tried to understand how the world works. Stuff that slowly evolved into science and medicine. Makeup and jewelry, those are just human beings understanding beauty and wanting to participate in it. But all of these things share something in common. They are all very good at turning into something else. Toolmaking and technology doesn't just stay about building. They turn into an arms race. The same knowledge that lets you build a shovel lets you make a sword. And once that door is open, it stays open. The desire to understand how nature works doesn't just stop there either. Eventually it becomes a will to predict nature, then a will to control and overcome it. And beauty as a reflection of its creator, that's one of the easiest things in the world to lose sight of. And the moment you do, that thing that is supposed to help you contemplate the source of beauty becomes an obsession unto itself. Either the need to possess it, or the compulsion to embody it. These are all good things that were meant to be in service to a purpose. But the moment they stop serving that purpose, they start to become something else. Which is exactly what seems to happen with the Watchers. They weren't created to be in the world. They were created to guide the world up toward heaven, but instead they push themselves down into it. They take wives, which in the language of the ancient world basically means they domesticate themselves. They put down roots. It's a way of saying, hey, we live here now. And everything that they are, all the divine meaning and principles they represent, all of that enters the world in the same way, totally unmoored from its proper purpose and orientation. So in Enoch, the angelic fall isn't just a story of rebellion against God. It's a story about a misalignment between meaning and expression. Things that were meant to point beyond the world instead become active participants in it. And what was meant to express God starts to just express itself. In Matthew 18, Jesus is giving a sermon, and in the middle of it, he points to a child and says, "Their angels always see the face of my Father." A child, in almost every religious tradition, represents a kind of original closeness to God, at least as close as anyone can get in this life. And Christ is saying that their angels are close to God too. They're held there by what they see. The direct perception of God, what the tradition calls the beatific vision. To see God completely is to be completely yourself. To recognize yourself as a particular mode of expressing and participating in what He is. But if some angels always see the face of God, then some don't. Some have looked away. An angel that turns its gaze from God doesn't acquire evil as a new property. It just starts to become less itself. A diminished and self-contradicting version of the thing it was meant to be. The angel of a nation, which is supposed to express something true and noble about a particular way of life, falls into tribalism, then blood and soil. The same love of people and place, but turned inward and hostile, until it brings ruin to the same people it was supposed to represent. Even the physics that produces all this staggering complexity in the universe, trillions of galaxies, this incomprehensible diversity and abundance of life, one of its most fundamental laws is entropy. All the order and symmetry, all these complex systems, they're aimed at nothing. Literally, everything is trending toward nothing. When the Apostle Paul says that all of creation is subject to futility, he's clearly not just describing the consequences of human sin. He's describing a creation whose innermost structures of meaning are working against their own nature. Its principalities and powers, the organizing spirits of nations and cultures, natural forces, the very patterns of reality, all of these are not fully what they were made to be. And the world they hold in their grasp bears the wound of their contradictions. I think we all know this wound. We recognize it in ourselves. We feel it the most in a nagging ache that we do not fully embody what we truly feel ourselves to be, in our deepest inner sense of ourselves. And that the distance between the two isn't just a matter of effort or circumstance. That something is broken at a deeper level than that. Just as Christ implicates the angels of the churches in Revelation, your life cannot be cleanly separated from the distorted patterns of meaning that it participates in. Which means that our current distance from God is not just a moral failing. We didn't arrive into a world that was otherwise working fine until humans sinned. Distance from God is the present condition of reality itself. Like Paul says in his letter to the Romans, the whole of creation is in labor pains. Everything, the things of earth and the invisible patterns that give it shape, are still struggling to express what they actually are. And this is what Christianity has always insisted upon, against every form of Gnosticism and nihilism. against every system of thought that sees the brokenness of the world and takes it for its nature. The Christian hope is not that we are being rescued from our nature. We are being reconciled to it.